Happy Friday. It's 4 o'clock in New York. So it turns out that the massive $787.5 million settlement in the Dominion Fox News case will not mean the end of the steady drip of damaging revelations involving Fox and those who used Fox to peddle the big lie to try to overturn an election and, by extension, our democracy. Take, for example, this from former Fox News producer turned whistleblower Abby Grossberg. This is Ted Cruz on November 7th, 2020. That's the day President Joe Biden was projected to be the winner by all of the networks of the 2020 election. He was on a phone call with Fox's Maria Bartiromo, stressing the need for proof of any actual election fraud. Listen.
Can't just be, somebody tweeted this. It's got to be demonstrable facts that can be laid out with evidence, because that's what court of law is going to look to, not just an allegation, but actual facts. And so, I'm hopeful. I hope when Rudy comes on the show tomorrow, he has some of those facts, and I hope the legal team continues to lay out the specific evidence, because that's what it's going to take to prevail in court.
They were all pinning all of their hopes on Rudy and Sidney Powell. Explains why Team Trump would go on to lose 61 times in court, judge after judge after judge, in courts all across the country. Some of those judges appointed by Donald Trump himself, as well as the United States Supreme Court, dismissed Trump's claims of fraud and his attempts to overturn the 2020 election through the courts. And they lost because, as they very well knew, as Ted Cruz knew, there wasn't any evidence of fraud. Recall what former Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers testified to before the January 6th Select Committee about a phone call meeting he had with Rudy Giuliani.
At some point, did one of them make a comment that they didn't have evidence, but they had a lot of theories?
That was Mr. Giuliani.
And what exactly did he say, and how did that come up?
My recollection, he said, we've got lots of theories, we just don't have the evidence. And I don't know if that was a gaffe, or maybe he didn't think through what he said, but both myself and others in my group, the three in my group, and my counsel, both remembered that specifically, and afterwards we kind of laughed about it.
I guess it could be funny, but the harm it's done is undeniable, right? There was never any evidence, the lack of, quote, actual facts and specific evidence, as Ted Cruz and Rusty Bowers put it. As Ted Cruz puts it during a phone call on November 7th with Maria Bartiromo. But then it doesn't stop him from working as a senator to overturn the election result. Here he is on January 6th, even though he knows there's no evidence, objecting to the certification of President Joe Biden's Electoral College win. Watch.
I want to speak to the Republicans who are considering voting against these objections. I understand your concerns, but I urge you to pause and think. What does it say to the nearly half the country that believes this election was rigged if we vote not even to consider the claims of illegality and fraud in this election?
What Cruz and what Fox still can't grasp is that half the country believed that because they were lied to by people like Ted Cruz and Fox News. Cruz, unsurprisingly, did not respond to a request for comment from MSNBC, and today there's more. We have more evidence today showing that members of Team Trump, easy for me to say, had their own doubts about whether the people who claim to have the goods about election fraud actually ever had any of the goods about election fraud. In an audio recording that is exclusive to Deadline Whitehouse, former Trump administration official Peter Navarro, who played an integral role in peddling election fraud claims, expresses his own doubts about attorney Sidney Powell's claims and her credibility. Here he is talking to Abby Grossberg more than 2 weeks after the January 6th insurrection. Listen.
Sidney Powell, she sends me stuff by mistake. There's an Abby in her office. There's an Abby in her office, and through the whole Flynn trial, she sends me stuff, and then she frantically calls or emails me saying, please delete it, it's confidential.
The horse is out of the barn, right?
So she mistakenly sent me something on Signal on that phone. I'm like, I wonder what that is, but I'm not going to open it because I don't want it to be evidence. And then comes the call 2 minutes later, please delete it. That wasn't intended for you.
Well, you have no idea how much damage she did to our efforts. She really, I'm telling you, when the history was written on this, she was like the turning point in our inability to prove the case. Because she was like so far out there that people like pulled back. We were on the verge of some breakthroughs in the state legislature level. And then that happened, and it was like Katie bar before. It's like, damn. Just not good.
Interestingly, in a statement to MSNBC, when we were going to play this tape, Peter Navarro didn't walk away from any of it. In fact, he doubled down on the statements he made about Sidney Powell, saying this, quote, Sidney Powell is basically the worst thing that ever happened to the election integrity issue. As always, I'm being candid with Abby Grossberg, just as I'm being candid with the American people. Internal doubts about the veracity of their fraud claims by senior Trump allies about whether there was ever any evidence of election fraud revealed in new audio recordings is where we start today. Joining us now at the table, Gerry Filippatos. Did I botch that? Being a Greek, I feel like I nailed that.
Perfectly.
You were the attorney representing Abby in her ongoing lawsuit against Fox News.
Yes.
I think there's some mistake to think that these matters are closed, but they're not at all.
Not at all closed. Abby has two lawsuits, one in Delaware, where she is essentially alleging that there was a civil conspiracy to throw her under the bus, get her to testify falsely, to cover up Fox's misdoings in that case. And that case is ongoing in Delaware. And then she has a case in the Southern District of New York, which is a very unique, even for me who's been doing this for 30 years, practicing employment discrimination law, a uniquely strong case alleging gender discrimination, glass ceiling discrimination, failure to promote. She didn't get an executive producer spot, although she was a one-woman show along with Maria Bartiromo, and then ultimately was replaced by a man. And then even worse, jumped out of the frying pan into the fire and went to the Tucker Carlson show, where she was subjected to one of the most vile, toxic work environments I've seen in my 30 years of practice.
I've heard some of what, and I've read some of what you and she are alleging, and I want to deal with all of the second, but let's deal with the first one first. Is it a crime to not comply with discovery?
It's not a crime, but it's a serious offense, both for a litigant and for an attorney, probably even more serious for an attorney. And I have to say, I'm shocked at the conduct that went on here. I mean, as I said, been practicing a long time. I don't have to say it, you can just look at my face. I've prepped a lot of witnesses. I'll give you a confession since we're both Greek. I used to be on the other side and do defense work early in my career. And so I've prepped witnesses on both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong as an attorney. I mean, what you're supposed to do is marshal the evidence in favor of your client. You're supposed to, Lego build the wall of either prosecution or defense in order to make your case. That's different from actually denying the evidence, actually affirmatively coaching your client to perjure themselves. The client you're supposed to be protecting as a matter of professional responsibility. And that's what they did to Abby Grossberg. So that's way off the charts. And then to stand up in open court and to actually continue to lie, which I guess, sometimes they say you can see a dog looks like its master. I guess, the Fox attorneys look like Fox. They trade in lies. They just the truth is unimportant to them. So for them to stand up in court, and after they're excoriated by the judge in Delaware saying to them, you can't say that, as they represented in discovery, that Rupert Murdoch is somehow in charge of Fox News, and therefore you didn't have to produce all this evidence, which they ultimately had to produce. So the judge yells at them. This is like the Wednesday before the case actually is supposed to go to trial and settles. So he yells at them for like an hour, and then he finishes that, and then one of the attorneys stands up, and they start to deal with the Abby Grossberg's evidence that she presented in that case that was pretty significant. And the Fox attorney says, oh, no. she never told us about those tapes. I mean, we never knew about them at all. And Abby will, swear on a stack of Bible she has already that she told them very clearly that she had those tapes, and she turned them over. And we find, digging through all this stuff without getting into the weeds too much, that they clearly knew, and they clearly held the evidence back because they wanted strategic advantage and broke the rules.
So let's just talk about where the evidence was. So the recordings that got the judge so angry were recordings she made working with Maria on a weekend program. And she sits with the Fox lawyers and tells them about this program where she's recorded pre-interviews.
Right.
People do them all the time.
Exactly.
I'm sure my team did one with you.
Right.
Yes. And then she does what? She gives her phones to the lawyers, right? And then what is the normal practice? She's told them about her practice. She's told them where the recordings are, and she's turned over her phone. What should Fox have done?
They should have listened to the recordings and determined whether they were relevant to the outstanding requests for discovery by Dominion, and then they should have produced them, or at the very least, because I think on one of them there was an issue of reporter's privilege, they should have produced them on a privilege log. Mm-hmm. They didn't say anything about anything until we filed our complaint in the Delaware court and put in an, I don't want to get into the weeds, but put in a corrected errata sheet. So
right, her depo gets corrected.
So, because one step back, she gives a deposition after they basically coach her and intimidate her, and they throw her in the... There's like 4 attorneys who spent 4 days with her. You never spent 4 days with a witness. Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so she goes in for her deposition, gives her deposition. What's supposed to happen after that is under Delaware law, you're supposed to get a transcript of your deposition so you can read it and make sure it's correct. You didn't say anything that you didn't mean to say, nothing was mistranscribed, etc. 5.5 months later, only after I start to represent her, and we've asked about, 6-7 times, does she get her deposition transcript?
Why?
I've said on other shows, I don't spend any time trying to read Fox's mind.
Well, I want to know if you think she's the only person who told Fox's lawyers where there were recordings and potential evidence that they didn't then, when they were handed that Fox employee's phone, go download and turn over to Dominion as part of discovery.
For a fact, I can only talk about Abby's experience. I will tell you that I have had conversations with others close into that litigation. Because remember, we weren't technically in that litigation. We had our own case. But at least the pattern of incomplete and obviously coached answers and depositions was not just observed in Abby's deposition.
Let's talk about the workplace. So she works for Maria. That's where some of these recordings are made. But she's at Tucker Carlson most recently. Tell me what that was like for Abby.
I'll just take one step back and explain why she went from Maria to a Tucker show. She had 2.5 years with Maria, and she's often said Maria was an idol for her. She used to watch her on CNBC, and Maria was a trailblazer. I think she was the first woman on the floor of the stock exchange. She was a respected journalist. So when Fox came and heavily recruited Abby, who was at CBS Evening News at the time, she didn't go right away. She had an opportunity for a few other shows, and finally when the Maria opportunity came up, she went because she thought it would be great. And she quickly found out that it was really Maria and Abby, and these two women in this highly chauvinistic, horrible place. I mean, she was there for 1 week before one of the senior producers said to Abby, Maria, you have to tell us everything she does. She's menopausal, she's crazy, and then afterwards, when they saw the two of them together, after maybe like a year, then they started to, a lot of the male executives started to just ignore them and wouldn't give them credit. Like I think Abby told me a story about, she was the first, they were the first to have Trump on after he lost the election. Huge gap, right? And in some discussion with one of the senior producers, I think it was David Clark, who's the supervisor, he characterized that as, just silly weekend fluff. So that was the kind of attitude that they were up against. And eventually that led to Abby not being given the executive producer title, although she was the only one working on the show with Maria, and it was the #1 rated show, I think, on the weekends in general, not just Fox. So she figures out, this is not going to work for me. She's also feeling kind of, you know, queasy about Maria's very, at that point, you know, buying into the big lie, and she's trying to push back. Abby is trying to sort of get some informed objectivity in the room.
Does Abby believe Joe Biden won the election?
Oh yeah.
When did she come to believe that?
Well, she started to have suspicions about, you know, the big lie probably a week or two in, right?
So she entertains the conspiracy things for about a week, and then she does.
Right, and then she's doing her job, and she's trying because she's the producer.
I get it.
She
yeah.
has to.
But I think Maria still does. So I'm just trying to figure out when.
I mean, we can't read Maria's mind, but that's what it seems like. And Abby feels, you know, I mean, I've spoken to her about this a lot. I mean, she said to me, you know, first of all, hypothetically, she said to me, because I can't say anything she told me, because then we would lose all attorney-client privilege. But she might say something to me like, the only thing I have to hide is that I believe that for a week. That's what embarrasses me. I mean, so you get the fact that she's really, at this point, feeling, you know.
Looks like now that she's in your hands, he's your client, she's trying to sort of correct the record. She's worried that might be a vulnerability.
Well, I think she just, you know, it's human nature. You just feel stupid when you do something, you know.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
So,
can you say more about this? You said you were sort of on the defense side before. What does it say to you that a company that really seemed from the outside to have paid a hefty price during the Me Too years? I mean, there are women who were known for coming out and telling the truth about Fox News, and it seems to have absolutely put another senior woman in their newsroom through the wood chipper.
Yeah. I think that it doesn't say a lot for Fox's ability to abide by norms, abide by rules, abide by the law, and it says a lot for its arrogance. You know, I often call it an onion of arrogance. You keep peeling, and it just starts to stink more and more. And I think that what our greatest worry is that you know, Fox is not going to change, and at this point, Abby has been put into a position by Fox, throwing her out there, trying to effectively throw her under the bus of a $1.6 billion lawsuit, which, you know, she had some senior executive say to her like a couple of months before the trial started to heat up, or before she left rather. Oh, this was, you know, the Dominion lawsuit is all your fault because you didn't put up a you know,
full screen,
which she actually did. She pointed out that no, I did put up the full screen. So at some point she says to herself, well, I have to defend myself. I have to make sure that the truth is known, first of all, about what happened to me, and secondly, about what Fox has done. So we are committed to going through this until the end, until Fox acknowledges its mistakes, acknowledges that it lied about Abby, and that it lied about the election.
Is part of that helping Smartmatic make its case against Fox?
Well, I would say two things. One, on a moral ground, I was, you know, very heartened to hear Smartmatic's lead attorney, I think yesterday, say that, you know, as far as he's concerned, Smartmatic isn't settling until all the truth comes out, and there is a public acknowledgement by Fox that they misrepresented the facts, right? And we want that, and we want that regarding Abby as well, and we won't rest until that happens. As technically speaking, I think that Abby's civil conspiracy case that's in Delaware is really the sinew between the Dominion case and the Smartmatic case, because a lot of the common players are involved that she has certain evidence about. And one thing to say about Abby is that she keeps the receipts, so there's a lot of evidence.
And it's my understanding that she investigated her own case. So in terms of being able to surprise her, the two of you have the facts and the research and have done the discovery that Fox didn't do. Is that accurate?
It's fair to say.
What is your sense in terms of what she possesses that we in the public haven't seen? How damaging is that to Fox? I mean, do you think she was a factor in Fox deciding to settle?
Again, I can't read Fox's mind, don't even try, but look at the facts, right? I mean, in my business, you put cases together through circumstantial evidence most of the time, especially in discrimination cases. You know, typically you don't have the smoking gun when an employer says, oh, I'm firing you because of your age, your gender, your race, etc. So you have to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And if you have a case that hasn't settled, And really, every lawyer says that, when you settle a case on the courthouse steps, you've really failed your client on both sides, right? Because you shouldn't have to go through all of that pain, and especially in this case, from Fox's perspective, to have all that stuff come out, and to have, to be on the eve of having your chairman on the stand. So it should have been settled much earlier, but it wasn't. And maybe part of that was Smartmatic holding the line, but I'm sure if Smartmatic was, took $787 million last week, they probably would have taken it 3 months ago, right? So I think that there was something happened, and the one thing that I can think that happened is that Abby came forth with a lot of evidence that they're still trying to suppress. They just filed another motion. They've now lost, I think, 3 motions trying to gag Abby, and they just filed a 4th or at least a letter in Delaware.
And you said to my colleague Ari that law enforcement has been in touch about the recordings. What can you say about that?
I can only say that we're in communication with numerous law enforcement agencies about the tapes that we've made public, and we've informed these law enforcement agencies that there are more tapes. We're sifting through upwards of 90 tapes.
Are you concerned about, I think about women like Cassidy Hutchinson and Gretchen Carlson and others who have sort of taken a stand against either Fox specifically or this Trumpy wing of the party. I think about the witness tampering that took place with Cassidy Hutchinson. Are you worried about her as a person?
Well, I worry about my clients all the time, and I worry especially about a high-profile client. But, some lawyers say you're only as good as your client, and, I'm blessed to have a wonderful client. She's amazingly courageous, resilient, educated, and smart, and she has photographic memory. She knows the case better than I do, and I spend a lot of time studying the case.
Has she heard from Maria Bartiromo?
I haven't had that discussion with her. Probably, within the last 6 months or so, I think at some point. But they left, I'll say this, I haven't heard anything that they've had any kind of acrimonious exchange. How
about Tucker Carlson?
No. I don't think she never had much of a, communication with Tucker Carlson. It's funny, you said you wanted some of the, sort of the Hollywood behind the scenes stuff, right?
Sure.
So when Abby testified at her deposition, remember they're hammering her to get her to say exactly this or that, and they had shown her an email or text, I'm not sure which, where Tucker Carlson used some vile misogynistic language. And this was as she was transitioning. That's another key piece of the story. The deposition prep and actual deposition happened as she was going from Maria Bartiromo to Tucker Carlson. So they, in deposition prep, they show this email and they say, Dominion's attorneys might show you something like this and say, are you offended by it, right? And C word, all sorts of horrible stuff.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. And which, by the way, was bandied about like hello, apparently in the newsroom there.
In the shocking but not surprising category.
Right. So they prep her and they get her to say, well, I didn't really didn't happen while I was there. I'm just starting there now. I can't say, right? Which of course was not truthful. She didn't feel truthful to her. And we corrected it in the errata sheet, right? So after the deposition, this comes out somehow. And to the David Clark and others. So they have an Abby Day where they get bagels and coffee to congratulate her for, sticking up for Tucker and making sure that he didn't get into trouble.
Oh my God. I can't, Wow. Let me just do this in the spirit of housekeeping and fairness. This is Fox's statement on Abby to the New York Times, quote, "We will continue to vigorously defend Fox against Ms. Grossberg's unmeritorious legal claims, which are riddled with false allegations against Fox and our employees," a Fox News spokeswoman said. We'll see if the bagel breakfast is among what they're claiming to have been false. Let me ask you one last question.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
First? So, where's the camera?
Your camera's right here.
So I'd like to speak to Fox's attorneys, and I've said this in letters before, so I'll just do it on TV.
Sure.
I challenge you to debate me. I'll go on Fox Air with any of you, all of you, and you can show me one place, just one, in any of our public pleadings where we have said a falsehood. I can show you probably 50 in yours.
Well, there you have it. A challenge to, I think Ari Melber would be better suited to moderate, so I'm going to stay out of this one. But I appreciate
Sorry,
your
I
time.
really wanted to do that.
No.
They've really upset me.
You are clearly committed to your client and to helping us as the public understand what's going on behind the scenes at Fox News, not just related to the Dominion case, but to Abby's cases. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Yes. When we come back, there are new details from Jim Rutenberg at the New York Times on what was the absolute non-starter for Dominion, the no-go zone, and what the Fox News hardline was in those final negotiations, as well as how Rupert Murdoch himself factored into all of it. Plus, a nation armed to the hilt with guns, along with more self-defense laws empowering Americans. We'll take another look at how both of those things, combined with small missteps that everybody makes in their own lives, are yielding deadly new consequences. And later in the broadcast, the Supreme Court is expected to weigh in by midnight tonight on whether a pill used by millions of American women for miscarriage, healthcare, and abortions should remain available and legal.